My fiancée said at the venue, "I want a destination wedding in Bora Bora. Tell your grandparents they can't come. They're too old to travel." My grandparents raised me. I said, "Let me think about it." Then I canceled the venue, threw a small ceremony with my grandparents officiating, and married someone else 6 months later. I, 29M, was standing in the center of the grand atrium of the city botanical gardens, feeling like everything in my life was finally falling into place. The glass ceiling soared 50 feet above us, filtering the warm afternoon sunlight over rows of blooming orchids, cascading ivy and exotic ferns. The venue coordinator was smiling brightly, holding a clipboard with our finalized seating chart and vendor list. I had my checkbook out, pen in hand, ready to hand over the final $15,000 deposit for the space, the catering, and the live band. We were exactly 6 months away from the wedding. Everything was set, locked in, and paid for up to this final milestone. I looked over at my fiancée, 27F, fully expecting to see the exact same excitement we had shared when we first toured the place a year ago. Instead, she was staring at the floral arrangements with a look of profound, unmistakable disgust. She turned to the coordinator, her tone clipping the air like scissors. "Could you give us a minute? My fiancé and I need to discuss a sudden change of plans." The coordinator blinked, her professional smile faltering for just a second before she took a polite step back. She gave a quick nod and retreated to her glass-walled office across the atrium. I slowly lowered my checkbook, completely confused. What change of plans? I asked, keeping my voice low so the other venue staff wouldn't hear. My fiancée crossed her arms, her posture stiffening as she looked around the lush greenhouse. "I don't want this anymore. I was looking at Instagram last night, and this whole greenhouse vibe is just cheap. It's local. It's boring. I want a destination wedding in Bora Bora." I honestly stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There was no smile. She was dead serious. "Bora Bora?" I asked, my brain struggling to process the sudden pivot. We've been planning this exact wedding for a year. The $10,000 deposit we already put down is non-refundable. All our out-of-town guests have already booked their hotels. And more importantly, my grandparents cannot endure a 14-hour flight and multiple international layovers. Here is the thing you need to know about my family. My grandparents raised me. My parents passed away in a tragic car accident when I was only 5 years old. My grandfather, who is now 82, worked grueling double shifts at steel manufacturing plant for over a decade just to keep a roof over my head and food on the table. My grandmother, who is 79 and suffers from severe, crippling rheumatoid arthritis, spent hours every single night helping me with my homework, despite her hands aching so badly she could barely hold a pencil. They are my parents in every way that matters. They are my entire world. My fiancée knew this from the very first month we started dating. She knew they were the most important people in my life. She rolled her eyes. It was a sharp, dismissive gesture that completely caught me off guard. "Tell your grandparents they can't come. They're too old to travel. It's my wedding day." I am not compromising my dream aesthetic just because they have bad joints and bad hearts. They can watch it on a live stream from their living room, or they can just stay home. Let's be honest, they'll ruin the vibe of a tropical luxury, wedding anyway with their wheelchairs and complaining. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. I looked at the woman I had spent 3 years of my life with, the woman I had financially supported through her master's degree, the woman who had sat at my grandparents' modest dining table eating Sunday roast for years, smiling and acting like part of the family. In that single, terrible moment, the mask didn't just slip, it completely shattered. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene in the middle of the botanical gardens. A cold, absolute clarity washed over me, chilling me right down to my bones. "Let me think about it," I said quietly. Her scowl instantly vanished, replaced by a radiant, victorious smile. "I knew you'd see it my way. It's going to be so gorgeous. I'll start looking at overwater bungalows tonight when we get home." She linked her arm through mine as we walked out to the car, completely oblivious to the fact that she had just permanently destroyed our relationship that night. She went to bed early, exhausted from enthusiastically researching luxury Pacific Island resorts. I stayed awake in the dark living room, sitting on the couch with a glass of water. Something about her sudden, aggressive pivot to Bora Bora gnawed at my instincts. It wasn't just entitled behavior. It felt deeply calculated. She hadn't just suggested a generic beach somewhere. She had specifically named Bora Bora. She had the argument ready to go, and she was entirely too eager to exclude my family from the picture. Her iPad was charging on the kitchen counter. We had always maintained an open phone and device policy, though I rarely ever check her things because I trusted her. Tonight, I did. I walked into the kitchen, bypassed the lock screen using her passcode, and tapped on her messaging app. I didn't even have to scroll. Right at the top was a highly active text thread with a contact saved simply as yoga instructor. I knew for an absolute fact my fiancée hadn't been to a single yoga class in over 2 years. My heart hammering in my chest, I opened the thread. The messages were not about scheduling stretching sessions. They were from her former co-worker, a 30-year-old guy who I had met twice at corporate mixers and was explicitly told had moved across the country for a new job. Let's call him the affair partner. Affair partner. Did you tell him yet? The resort needs a wire transfer by Friday or we lose the overwater premium suite. Fiancé, I planted the seed today at the venue. I told him I wanted Bora Bora and that his ancient grandparents couldn't come. He said he'll think about it, which means yes. He always caves to whatever I want. Affair partner. You're sure you can get the cash out of the joint account without him noticing? My credit cards are completely maxed out right now. Fiancé, relax. The wedding fund has 30 grand in it. I'll just transfer the money to my personal checking account. Tell him I'm paying the Bora Bora planners directly to handle the currency exchange, and we book our tickets. We do a fake 10-minute ceremony on the beach just for the photos to keep him quiet, and then we have a 2-week luxury vacation, just you and me. I'll deal with divorcing him and taking half his assets when we get back. He's such a pushover, he won't even fight it. I sat at the kitchen island for hours. The blue glow of the screen illuminated the absolute ruin of my future. She wasn't just acting like an entitled bridezilla. She was actively orchestrating a massive, calculated financial and emotional fraud. She planned to steal the money I had painstakingly saved up, money that my grandfather had actually contributed $5,000 to as a heartfelt wedding gift, to fund a romantic, luxurious getaway with her lover. She planned to marry me purely to secure half my assets in a divorce a few months later, leaving me utterly humiliated and financially ruined. The next morning, she woke up in a foul, impatient mood. I played my part perfectly. I poured her morning coffee. I acted conflicted, slightly stressed, but entirely compliant. I need access to the joint wedding account, she demanded, not even looking up from her phone, as she scrolled through resort photos. The planners in Bora Bora require an immediate international wire transfer to secure the dates. I'm moving $25,000 over to my personal checking today, so I can handle the international wires easier without your bank flagging it. Are you sure we shouldn't just keep in the joint account and wire it from there? I asked, keeping my voice perfectly level and innocent. No, she snapped, glaring at me. Your bank always flags international wires. Mine doesn't. Just let me handle the logistics. You just focus on calling your grandparents and telling them they aren't coming. I'll drive over and talk to them today. I lied smoothly. She smiled, a sickly sweet expression, kissed my cheek, and left for work. The exact second her car pulled out of our driveway, I went to work. I drove straight to the main branch of my bank. Since I was the primary account holder and the sole source of funds in the joint wedding account, I legally had full right to the money. I sat down with banker and withdrew the entire $30,000 via secure cashier's check. Then I closed the joint account completely. It ceased to exist. From the bank, I drove directly back to the Botanical Gardens. I sat down in the glass office with the venue coordinator from yesterday. I need to cancel the wedding, I said plainly. She looked deeply sympathetic, probably used to seeing couples implode. I understand. If you're moving to a destination wedding, we do have a cancellation policy. I'm not moving to a destination, I interrupted. The wedding is off entirely. I caught her cheating. But before we do the paperwork, let me ask you something. The contract for this space is solely in my name, correct? She pulled up her digital files and checked. Yes, only your signature is on the binding agreement, and all the deposits came from your personal accounts. Great. I know the $10,000 deposit is completely non-refundable for cancellations, but I don't want to cancel the event date itself. I want to keep the catering, keep the band, keep the venue. I just want to rebrand it. Put a hold on it for me. Can we do that? The coordinator smiled, a genuine, warm smile of solidarity. We absolutely can put the contract on hold and convert the event type. What are we celebrating instead? Over the next 4 days, my ex's behavior escalated from merely entitled to completely unhinged. She tried to make her sneaky transfer and realized the joint account was closed. She stormed into the house that evening, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Where's the money?" she shrieked, throwing her designer purse violently against the hallway wall. The bank flagged the account for suspicious activity. I lied, maintaining eye contact. I had practiced this exact excuse in the mirror. Something about a fraud alert regarding an unauthorized international vendor ping. They froze the whole thing and forced me to move the funds to a secure, temporary holding account while their fraud department investigates. They said it will take at least a week to clear. She panicked. I could literally see the cold sweat forming on her forehead. The Bora Bora deposit deadline was rapidly approaching, and her affair partner was likely breathing down her neck for the cash. This is when the truly dirty tricks began. Desperate for immediate cash to secure her illicit trip, she went completely behind my back. She drove to my grandparents' small, modest home on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at the office. My grandfather called me a few hours later, his voice trembling so badly I could barely understand him. "Son," he said softly, "your fiancée was just here. What did she say to you, Grandpa?" My grip on my phone tightened until my knuckles turned white. "She told us that you both decided to get married in the islands. She said you didn't have the heart to look us in the eye and tell us that we weren't invited because of our health. And she asked your grandmother for a diamond. My grandmother possessed exactly one item of real, substantial financial value, a stunning 2-carat vintage diamond ring that belonged to her great-grandmother. It was a priceless family heirloom that was meant to be passed down." She said, my grandfather continued, his voice breaking slightly with suppressed emotion, that since we were saving you so much money by not attending the reception, the least we could do was give her the antique ring to melt down and sell, to help pay for the resort upgrades. When your grandmother told her absolutely no, she called her a selfish, useless old burden and stormed out. A cold, dark fury settled into my bones. The time for playing passive games and gathering evidence was over. That very afternoon, I received a sudden alert on my phone from Experian. A hard inquiry had just hit my credit report. My ex, having failed to steal the family ring, had gone into our shared fireproof safe, taken my Social Security card, and attempted to apply for a $25,000 personal loan online, digitally forging my signature. She had just crossed the line from being a terrible, cheating partner to committing a literal federal crime. I didn't call a family lawyer because we weren't married yet. I called a ruthless civil litigator. I sat in his polished downtown office the next morning and laid out the printed iPad screenshots, the bank records, and the credit alert showing the fraudulent loan application. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed man in his late 50s, reviewed the documents with a grim expression. In this state, applying for a financial loan in someone else's name without their explicit consent is identity theft and wire fraud. It is a serious crime. Furthermore, her written intent in these text messages to use the joint wedding funds for an illicit vacation with a third party, under the deliberate guise of marrying you, constitutes fraudulent inducement and attempted civil conversion. I don't just want to stop her, I told him, my voice dead calm. I want to ruin her. Legally. Completely. I want her to face the absolute maximum consequences of her actions and her entitlement. The lawyer leaned back in his leather chair, a small smirk playing on his lips. We will contact the police immediately regarding the identity theft. But civilly, we can file a massive lawsuit for fraudulent misrepresentation and conversion. We can seek punitive damages for the deposits she tricked you into making. And I know exactly how and when we serve her the papers. You see, my ex had planned a massive, opulent bridal shower for herself. She had invited over 60 people, her friends, her entire extended family, and all her co-workers. She had booked a private, catered room at an upscale country club, putting the $5,000 bill on a credit card. She fully assumed I would eventually pay off after the wedding. The shower was scheduled for that coming Saturday afternoon. On Saturday morning, I woke up at dawn, packed all of my personal belongings into a moving truck I had rented under a friend's name, and permanently moved out of our lease apartment. I left her clothes and furniture exactly as they were. I left my house keys on the kitchen counter, right next to a neatly printed stack of the iPad screenshots detailing her affair and her theft plot. At exactly 1 p.m., the bridal shower was in full swing. The private room of the country club was lavishly decorated with massive floral arrangements, balloon arches, and a huge banner that read, Bride-to-be. My ex was sitting in a high-back wicker throne chair, wearing a custom white silk dress, opening expensive gifts while her mother and father beamed with pride from the front row. I walked right through the double oak doors. I wasn't alone. I was accompanied by my best man, my lawyer's retained professional process server, and 2 uniformed police officers I had explicitly requested for a civil standby, citing a volatile situation involving stolen identity and a confrontational individual. The entire room fell dead silent. The clinking of champagne glasses and the soft background music completely stopped. My ex stood up, her face flashing rapidly from deep confusion to sudden, panicked anger. What are you doing here? This is a girls-only event. And why the heck are the cops here? I walked calmly to the center of the room. I looked directly at her mother and father, who were staring at me in absolute shock. I apologized for the interruption to everyone's afternoon, I said, my voice projecting clearly across the silent, tense room. But there won't be a wedding. My fiancée canceled it last week because she decided my grandparents were too old and disabled to attend her aesthetic vision. But as it turns out, that wasn't the real reason at all. Her face went sheet white. Shut up. Get out of here right now. She lunged forward, but my best man stepped smoothly between us. Holding his hands up, I pulled a stack of thick envelopes from my jacket. I handed the first one directly to her father. Your daughter has been sleeping with her former co-worker for 6 months. She attempted to steal $30,000 of my hard-earned savings to fund a romantic getaway to Bora Bora with him, disguised me as a destination wedding. Loud murmurs of shock and gasps erupted around the room. Her bridesmaids started whispering furiously to each other. You're a liar, she screamed, her voice cracking into a hysterical, ugly pitch. He's crazy, Mom. He's totally making it up to embarrass me. I'm not making up the text messages, I said calmly, looking right at her. I left copies on the kitchen counter for you to review when you get home to our completely empty apartment. But more importantly, I'm not making up the felony. I turned to the process server. He stepped forward, holding a thick, heavy manila envelope. Are you the individual named on this document? He asked, reading her full legal name. She stared at him, trembling violently. She wouldn't answer. He dropped the envelope right at her feet on the expensive rug. You have been served. I looked directly into her panicked, tear-filled eyes. That is a civil lawsuit for fraudulent misrepresentation and attempted conversion of funds. Furthermore, the police department has formally been notified about your attempt to take out a $25,000 loan using my Social Security number on Tuesday. The fraud department at the bank has the IP logs. They know you did it from your personal laptop in our living room. Her mother let out a loud gasp, dropping her glass of mimosa. It shattered loudly on the hardwood floor. Her father stood up, his face flushed red with absolute fury, turning to look down at his trembling daughter. Is this true? Tell me right now he's lying. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She just began to sob uncontrollably, sinking back into her elaborate wicker throne, covering her face with her hands. Have a great shower, I said. I turned around and walked out of the room with my best man and the officers, leaving her to face the absolute, undeniable destruction of her reputation, her family's trust, and her legal standing. The fallout over the next few months was catastrophic for her. The legal system doesn't move overnight, but when it does, it crushes you, The criminal investigation regarding the loan fraud intensified quickly because the loan hadn't actually been disbursed. The Experian fraud alert stopped it before the money moved. She narrowly avoided major federal prison time. However, she was formally indicted and eventually took a plea deal for severe state-level misdemeanor for identity fraud. She was placed on strict probation, ordered to complete hundreds of hours of community service, and hit with massive court fines. The civil suit was an absolute bloodbath. She tried to hire a cheap attorney, but they quickly realized they had absolutely zero defense against the documented text messages and the bank IP logs. She tried to beg me to settle, leaving me crying voicemails, but I flatly refused. I dragged her through the agonizing discovery process. Every text message, every sordid detail of her affair, and her cruel comments about my grandparents became a matter of public court record. Eventually, completely broke and unable to afford her lawyer's retaining fees, she defaulted on the lawsuit. The judge awarded me compensatory damages for the money she had wasted on non-refundable deposits for her own selfish side projects like her custom dress and the shower, plus punitive damages and all my attorney's fees. She was slapped with a legal judgment of nearly $40,000. She obviously didn't have the money. I immediately filed the paperwork for wage garnishment. For the next decade, a significant percentage of every single paycheck she earns will go directly into my bank account. Her affair partner? He dumped her the exact moment. He found out she didn't have my $30,000 to fund his luxury island lifestyle. He blocked her number on everything and completely vanished. Her parents were so deeply humiliated by the country club incident and the subsequent highly public legal battles that they completely refused to help her pay a single dime of her legal fees. She was forced to move out of our nice apartment complex and into a tiny, cramped apartment with 3 loud college roommates just to survive the monthly wage garnishments. As for me, the universe has an incredibly strange way of righting itself when you stand up for what's right. Through the sheer nightmare of the legal battles, the police interviews, and the emotional betrayal, I reconnected with a woman I'll call colleague, 28F. We had worked together years ago and had always been incredibly good friends, but timing had never been on our side. When my life blew up, she was the one who stepped up. She helped me organize my massive files for the lawyer. She brought my grandparents groceries and sat and played cards with them when I was tied up in legal depositions. She was the one who sat with me on the porch of my new rental house late at night, drinking cheap beer, listening to me vent, and making me laugh until my ribs physically ached. One evening, about 4 months after the dramatic bridal shower incident, we were sitting on that same porch. The legal dust was finally starting to settle. I looked at her, truly looked at her in the fading evening light. I saw the deep kindness in her eyes, the fierce loyalty she had shown me during the worst period of my life, and the way she treated my grandparents with absolute reverence and love. "I think I'm in love with you," I said. It just slipped out of my mouth. No planning, no grand, sweeping gesture. Just the raw, honest truth. She smiled, her eyes tearing up slightly. "I've been in love with you for 5 years, you idiot." We didn't want to wait. Life had already brutally proven to me exactly how fragile and fleeting time could be. I didn't want a long, stressful engagement. I didn't want a massive, performative spectacle. I just wanted to be married to the right person, surrounded by the people who actually mattered. 6 months to the day after I initially canceled the event, the original wedding date finally arrived. I kept my promise to the venue coordinator. We didn't cancel the event. We used the credit and rebranded it perfectly. The botanical gardens were filled with just 50 of our closest, truest friends and family. The catering was immaculate. The live band played perfectly under the glass ceiling. Colleague wore a simple, elegant dress that absolutely took my breath away. And standing right at the front of the greenhouse, beneath the vibrant canopy of orchids, was my grandfather. He had gone online and gotten ordained specifically for this exact day, with my grandmother sitting in the very front row, weeping tears of absolute joy and clapping her hands. My grandfather led us through our vows. His voice didn't tremble once. It was strong, incredibly proud, and filled with love. We said our vows, we kissed, and the entire room erupted into cheers. It wasn't a pretentious destination wedding in Bora Bora. It was exactly where I was meant to be. The next morning, my new wife and I sat at our kitchen table, casually addressing a few wedding announcements to distant extended family members who couldn't make the trip. I paused, holding a blank white envelope. A wicked, highly satisfying thought crossed my mind. I wrote down an address I knew all too well from the legal paperwork. I took a glossy photo of my wife and me, kissing under the blooming orchids with my grandparents, smiling proudly in the background, and slipped it into the envelope. I added a small, handwritten note on the back. Turns out, the venue was absolutely perfect. The bride just needed a massive upgrade. Hope the 3 roommates are treating you well. I mailed it directly to my ex's cramped apartment. I heard through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances that when she opened that envelope, she completely lost her mind. She screamed so loud and threw such a violent fit that her roommates called a noise complaint to the landlord. She actually tried to call me from a burner number, leaving a string of hysterical, sobbing voicemails demanding to know how I could move on so fast, how I could do this to her, and complaining about how incredibly unfair her life had become. I didn't even listen to the whole thing. I just deleted the messages, blocked the number, and went back into the living room to watch a movie with my wife. Sometimes, the universe forces you to completely tear down the wrong life, so you have the necessary space to build the right one. I learned the hard way that true entitlement will always eventually cannibalize itself, leaving the greedy with absolutely nothing but their own mess. I protected my family. I aggressively secured my financial future, and I ended up exactly where I belong. If you loved seeing absolute justice served ice cold and a toxic, entitled partner getting completely legally dismantled, hit that subscribe button. It's totally free, unlike my ex's legally mandated monthly payments to my bank account.